for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in Arise analyst Constance Ikwoku. Good morning, Dr. Constance.
Good morning, Yolanda. Good morning, Nkechi and Charles. Why is everyone wearing black today?
We all got the memo, and we're just wearing it to welcome Charles back and say congratulations.
Absolutely. Congratulations. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Us to lunch, Charles.
Wow,
that would be a fantastic idea.
If not, you're not leaving the newsroom today.
Thank God there's so many restaurants here.
Yeah.
I mean, excuse me, we're right inside a hotel.
Well, you have to take us to lunch anyway.
No problem.
Welcome back. Okay, to look at the papers with us today, we have Emmanuel Azik, and he is a columnist with Vanguard newspaper. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day. In this day, Tinubu, INEC backbone of our democratic journey, role key to public trust in government, says his commitment to strengthen electoral system unshaken. Let's take a second story still in this day, which is National Assembly transmits landmark tax reform bills to Tinubu. With regard to the first story, we already know that the independent National Electoral Commission is essential to this democratic dispensation. The question is, do politicians know that, or do they see it that way as well? When the president says he's committed to strengthening the electoral system, does he actually mean what he says? Because that will require a lot of interference in the activities of INEC. We're talking about legitimacy, representation, public trust, etc. And to the tax reform bill, this is going to be one of the most sweeping overhauls of Nigeria's tax and revenue administration. It's a significant step, Emmanuel.
Yeah, first of all, I will start with the president's words and assertions as concerning the INEC being the backbone of our democratic enterprise. The president has said the right words. INEC, the electoral umpire, is the backbone, because when there is confidence and when there is trust in the electoral umpire, citizens have a confidence in their leadership, that whosoever they have placed in leadership, whosoever they have voted into leadership is the right person, or the right persons. But going forward, the words of the president, do they reflect our experience? That is the question one would ask. And when he particularly comments the INEC, especially his the move to build a new headquarters building, he's saying that such a building is reflective of the progress of our democracy. Such question, that's an assertion that will be called to question. And I must first of all say that if Atiku Abubakar, if Peter Obi were to say the same words as concerning our present INEC, would they say that the INEC we have as at now has been the backbone, and will continue to be the backbone of our democratic experience? Will Atiku Abubakar, will Peter Obi say the same words that the president is saying? So that is the issue. Because from our experience, especially in the 2023 elections, many people will not agree with what the president has said as concerning his commendations towards our democratic experience. Many people will reject it. And coming to the tax reform bill that has been passed to the president by the National Assembly, I want to commend the president for the bold initiative, the move towards reforming our tax system. It has been long due, and the president taking the bulls by the horns in totally proposing and seeing to the passage of these tax reform bills is it's worthy of commendation. You also remember that there was serious opposition, but the president stuck to his guns, and he's commendable. That is commendable. So one only hopes that the president will look at these bills, see if it meets his own threshold, and give the required passage, or assent, I mean.
Okay, moving on to New Telegraph. Massacres, time to act is now. Usman Danfodio's jihad didn't conquer Benue. according to MBF, which is the Middle Belt Forum. The MBF asked President Tinubu to combat the bloodletting in Benue State, and also asked him to overhaul the security architecture, questioning the appointment of 3 Fulani to key defense institutions, according to them, the National Security Advisor, the Minister of Defense, and Minister of State for Defense. These views were expressed by the MBF National President, Bitrus Pogo. Charles, you have to come in here. Historical perspective by the MBF on the jihad, the complexities of today Nigeria, the invasions, political tensions, land grabbing. You know, take it away. What do you think?
Simply put, the issue of the jihad that happened in 1806, where the invaders were defeated by Tiv warriors on 2 fronts, one at Ushongo Hills and 2 at Abinsi. And very simple, they were mounted invaders who were used to fighting from horseback and with swords. They ran into these warriors who used to fight with poisoned arrows, so they picked them off at a distance, and it's the reason why, even up till now, you know that the Benue communities and everything southwards have retained their cultural and largely religious identities, you know, proving that the jihad never went beyond that point. So it's the reason why the attacks happening now are being attributed to the fact that there was some unfinished business and they are trying to actually finish it now. These are some of the perspectives being offered. And I've personally met Dr. Pogu, you know, spoken to him at a different forum, and he firmly believes that this is what is playing out. And the federal government has to do something very, very crucial and very critical to stop the carnage that's going on. They call it communal...
Sorry, Charles, let me cut in. But in general, do Benue people feel the same way?
They do.
Okay.
They absolutely do. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about that. I mean, while growing up, I mean, the Tiv and the Fulanis used to be very, very friendly. I know that in my own village, they used to come grazing, and, you know, my grandfather would present them with yams and other farm produce, and then whenever they had any events, they'll also present our home with, you know, beef, cow meat.
Okay.
But now all that is completely lost, and unfortunately, it's why the fingers point firmly to politics. Politics has divided our people so badly.
Yeah, definitely. A complex state of the nation. Daily Independent this morning, LP mocks Tinubu says attempt to undermine Shatima, sign of internal decay. Let's go back to New Telegraph again, because we have that same story with an elaborate headline. There it says, 2027, Tinubu at crossroads over Shatima, under pressure to drop Vice President. Ribadu Barau Yari Dogara on the cards. Reports of NSA's endorsement entirely misleading, according to Adamawa APC. Northeast APC protest political karma, says LP. I mean, this battle is on. Emmanuel, you can come in here. Previously, names of possible contenders or replacements were not in public domain. Now we have them. How do you see this playing out, or what are you hearing?
Well, we are hearing a lot of things, and this undercurrent has been preceded by the fact, the treatment, as it were, that the Vice President has received under the present dispensation. Remember, the President has traveled repeatedly outside the country. He has never at once handed over power to him. That's to Shatima, unlike the Buhari presidency, when he used to hand over to Osibanjo at the beginning. So, but people are concerned and worried as to what may have caused this difference between the presidency, within the presidency, because there has been no, what has Shatima done? People are asking, because he's been totally sidelined, as it were. And concerning the names, a number of names have been mentioned as possible replacement. We hear his internal politics. People who want to succeed him are backstabbing Shatima. You know, in the palace, several court members within the court go about gossiping, saying one thing or the other against a possible contender. So that is what we are hearing. But Shetima's apparent sin has not been once disclosed. And this is quite unfortunate, given the fact that Shatima was one of the early people, one of the early political actors who identified with President Tinubu himself and Chairman Ganduje. They were the earliest people who stood with Tinubu. So it's quite unfortunate. One will ask the president to play the role of a statesman. If somebody has helped you, and there is no, if he has helped you in the past, and without any possible offense, I don't see any reason why this kind of instability will be coming in the presidency. But mark you remember, let me add, just during the campaigns, you remember that Shatima, given his background in Borno, said that he will act as marshal the defenses, while the president will marshal the economy. But we see that since the president came to power, the vice president has been totally secluded and put out of a relegation, and his experience in Borno has not been brought into play.
Okay, just a bit of correction. The president is not obliged to transmit power to the vice president when he's traveling for short periods. It's only when it's extended. And we know that during President Buhari's term, he was quite poorly, so he was away from the country for very long periods of time. Kechi, please come in. And
just to add to that, remember, we don't have the full picture, right? Because the two parties are coming out to say, there's no rift, nothing is happening. When we went to Northeast, we didn't have to call the vice president's name because it's one ticket. But remember last week, Democracy Day, when the president was addressing the Joint National Assembly, and he confidently said, look, I'm happy to watch the opposition parties in disarray, and I think that's why Labour Party is now coming out to give that comeback to say, look, your own party is not stable as well, because look at what's going on in the home turf of the vice president and all the reports that we're seeing coming out. And even now, we're even having potential list of names of people to potentially replace the vice president. So I think that's a bit funny.
We don't have time. We have to
forget that there was a time when there was a little bit of rift or rumors of a rift between Buhari and Osinbajo, despite the fact that they had this bromance in the first tenure when Buhari actually fired several of Osinbajo's aides. But well, apparently the two gentlemen mended fences eventually. So let's hope that this would also play out between Tinubu and Shatima.
And before we move on, we now have the Northwest, against the Northeast. So the names that are coming out from the Northeast are Ribadu and Dogara, and then from the Northwest we have Abdulaziz Yari and Mr. Barral. So, and then of course they are talking about whether it should be a Muslim ticket or Muslim-Christian ticket. Anyway, let's move on to the Guardian newspaper. Property owners shun CFO tied to registries over bureaucracy, a graft. The estimated time for completion of land registration varies and is tedious, lasting between 30 days and 12 months. In Lagos, a property owner would need to visit about 17 agencies to get permit approval. An estimated $300 billion in debt capital is reported as landowners cannot leverage their properties for loans or investments. And Getcha, I know you are a business reporter, but this report is eye-opening, although we're already aware of what is going on in this sector, but 17 different agencies just to get a permit. And
exactly, it's a bottleneck that all Nigerian property owners have to go through, and I think you've said it all really in that report, because when you have over 90% of land remaining unregistered, it's basically as good as having an invisible financial system, right?
Yeah.
If you have no title, you have no collateral. If you have no collateral, you have no access to credit. If you don't have credit, there's no housing boom. So we're just basically going backwards instead of moving forward. And instead of streamlining these agencies so people don't have to cross a lot of bureaucracy to get titles. So I think this report has really opened our eyes to see what we're lacking in terms of growing our economy when Nigerians cannot get the title they're required for their land or properties.
And hopefully the government can tackle the problem. We have to move on to the next story. I can bring you in there. Vanguard newspaper, fuel scarcity looms as marketers, truck owners boycott Lekki-Epe corridor. They were protesting the Lagos state government's enforcement of a controversial 12,500 naira e-call levy on trucks operating along that corridor. The protest has halted tanker movement and is fueling concerns over distribution. The e-call-up levy, which is part of a PPP initiative, is being enforced without adequate infrastructure and stakeholder input. They say the levy does not address traffic congestion, which is the primary reason for it. I mean, a lot of other things were said. But if there's anything the Lagos state government is famed for, is collecting taxes. And the residents claim that this is not commensurate with the services that are provided. Yolanda, you can come in here, please.
Thank you, Dr. Constance. I wish you had brought me in on the earlier one, but that's fine.
You can go ahead and comment as well, please.
No, I just, it's fine. I'll stick with the story at hand. I think, this anticipated fuel scarcity is something that is not new. It's pretty much the order of the day in Nigeria, which is very unfortunate news. And obviously, it has negative implications on businesses, on everyday life. So seeing such headlines, as much as it's very disheartening, it also brings attention to the fact that we need to find more credible solutions to this. I think, was it yesterday or so, we had a report on what Dangote is trying to do at the moment and really putting oil marketers on their toes with the new, was it 4,000 trucks? Please correct me if I'm wrong, that are being rolled out. I'm not sure if you heard of that report, Dr. Constance.
Quite a couple of trucks, yes, being rolled out by his
So, I mean, that, and then now this potential fuel scarcity that is anticipated. There's a lot to look forward to these coming weeks, I suppose.
All right, let's move on to the international headlines. Daily Graphic, Fitch upgrades Ghana's credit ratings. Yolanda, you can also come in here. This type of story always makes the headlines in African countries. At the end of the day, it's about borrowing and confidence in the country's ability to repay its debt.
So it's positive news, but at the same time, I realize that these Fitch ratings seem to be more useful in Western economies. Correct me if I'm wrong, because sometimes they don't reflect the reality of what's happening in economies. For example, I think a few weeks back we had a World Bank report on how the economy of Nigeria is doing. But when you ask the everyday person, they would not agree with those supposed ratings. The reality is that people are facing something very, very different. And I'm not sure if this is the same with Ghana's credit rating.
Yeah, so you're right in the sense that even Afrexim Bank that was downgraded recently, they did say that African countries need to have their own ratings.
That's
right. So, so it's a conversation or something that needs to be done.
It's ironic, just quickly, because you have Afrexim Bank rating being downgraded, and one of the reasons it was even downgraded is because some of the debts being owed to them by Ghana and I think Zambia, the Fitch put those debts as not, the countries cannot oblige those debts, as Ghana has told Afrexim Bank that they will not be able to pay those debts. And just to touch a little bit about this Fitch rating on Ghana, remember 2 years ago, you had Ghana on the edge of a financial cliff. They were crippled by Eurobond defaults, they had soaring inflation, and they said it wasn't doing really well. But now it's actually doing well, and they've been able to handle some of their debts, and I think that's where Fitch is coming from.
All right, the Sun newspaper is pressed on the brink of attack as this paper. Trump's Armada U.S. war fleet boasted in UK and Europe won't kill Iran leader for now. We've been following that story. I mean, it's like taunting Iran at this point, saying that the Ayatollah, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei is in hiding. They know where he is. He's an easy target. They can get him, but they won't kill him for now. They've asked him to completely surrender. We don't have time to discuss that story. Finally, newspaper, MPs vote to decriminalize abortion after 164 years. Finally. Historic debate, yes, in the House of Commons. Well, we have to wrap it up there. Emmanuel Azikiwe columnist with Vanguard newspaper. It's a pleasure to have you this morning.
Thank you.
All right. Before I say thank you to Constance, I don't know if Charles, I want to take your permission because people have been asking why we're congratulating you. Can I share? Is that okay? Charles found a wife and a good thing. That's why we're congratulating him.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Constance Ikoku, for always joining us to make sense of the front page news. That's all the time we have here on Daybreak. I'm Nkechi Nana.
And thank you so much, Nkechi, for letting the bag out. I'm Charles Eruka. It's goodbye from me.
Congratulations, Charles Eruka. I'm Yolanda Robert. Please do keep it here on Arise News. The morning show is next. Bye-bye.